G'day, Ben from Duck Playing Chicken here with the third and hopefully final video in this series of the Aoshima 1/48 scale Road Ranger kit from the movie Techno Police 21C. I'm not really going in the order of the instructions here. I'm sort of just going to build as much stuff as I can before I need to sort of hook up all the electronics, and I've got an idea for a base for this thing as well. So I'm going to start off with this little trailer thing that sort of hangs off the back. And of course I had to do quite a bit of assembly of it while I was painting it. I can still see the seam lines there, which is a bit disappointing, but in the scheme of things it's hardly going to be noticeable. So the way this works is we get this little axle piece which has not been painted, and this little silver detail piece, and I need to make sure I get this around the right way. Okay, so let's get that in place, get the axle lined up, push that through, and get these wheels on. I'm not sure if these wheels are going to need glue. It feels like they will. They're pretty loose on there and they're just falling off. They feel really loose on there, like they're not biting into that axle at all. So they definitely need some glue. Not quite sure what's going on there, but easy fixed. And then this bit will just clip on afterwards. It'll just clip on the end there. So let's get these wheels stuck on first. Alright, so get those wheels lined up, make sure they do sort of, it looks like they drift a little bit as far as how they sit on the axle. So just got to be careful of that. And then this one should clip in on here somewhere, like so. So that sort of folds up. Yes, a bit of a strange thing. It seems like a bit of an afterthought, but basically the robot sort of stands on the back there, hangs onto this thing while this is being dragged behind the car. It's very precarious. So anyway, that folds up, and then I think this is supposed to fold down somehow, but I'll let these wheels dry first. Okay, for the body, I need to get the glass in place. So try and get these wires out of the way. And then this goes in from the bottom. Okay, so I'm just trying to work out how it actually sort of sits in there. It's not a really positive fit. There's a little bit of a gap there which I'm not really happy about, but I don't think I'm going to have much of a choice at this stage. It's a little bit hard to tell. Again, the instructions sort of don't really clearly show what the end result should be. You know, you've got sort of a rough indication that yes, the windscreen sort of sits flat there, but it's not really that obvious when you look at the actual piece that's supposed to go there. So I'm going to go with that sort of setup there. Let's get some glue in there. Yeah, that doesn't look great, and what I'm worried about is how to fix the tub that goes in here. Yeah, it feels like the glass actually has to go up higher. Yeah, what a pain in the neck. So you can sort of see that gap there. Decisions. I actually think the problem I've got here is I probably shouldn't have put the mirrors in first. Probably should have put them in afterwards. because I think that's what's causing the problems. I do prefer it when it sits flat. Pretty sure that's the way it should go. And then the dashboard. Looks like we're running into all sorts of troubles here. It's like nothing sort of fits now. It's got paint on it. Oh dear. Oh dear. Alright, I'm kind of thinking I like the windscreen where it's currently sitting. That affects everything else. So I'm thinking I might have to do some surgery on these pieces. I probably should have tried fully assembling it before painting it. Alright, I'm going to have to go away and think about how I'm going to fix this and sort out what's going on. Okay, I've taken this piece off. I think what I have to do is actually grind this bit off. I don't think much of it's going to be seen. It might be a little bit rough, but there's definitely a problem with the way this is supposed to sit. So there is a line here. I'm going to basically grind it off all the way down to that line and see how that fits. It's making an awful mess of my beautifully painted windscreen. Cut that little bit off there. Try and make it as neat as possible. So you sort of see what I'm doing there compared to the other one. So I'll keep working at it until I can get it to sort of fit properly. Alright, so I've ground down those edges there. It's far from perfect. It's pretty rough, but let's see. Get everything to fit better. A little bit I have to take off here. I reckon that might be alright. I think that'll give me a lot cleaner result actually. Maybe disaster averted. Maybe. It's definitely a lot cleaner line doing it that way. There's still a little bit of a gap there, but there's not much I can sort of really do about that. Let's see if the tub now fits. It's still a little bit messy. You can sort of see where the door handle is. There's that sort of really ugly spot there. And you know, I guess it's, once I get the dashboard in, you're probably not going to see much of it, but that's all right. The tub now fits, so that's good. Happy with that. It does look very tight in there. I haven't even put the dashboard in yet. The steering wheel is going to be right up against the driver's chest. Anyway. So this is, this is sort of the joy, as frustrating as it can be. A lot of doing these older kits is just about troubleshooting, and there's nothing, a scalpel or a grinder can't generally fix. So that seems to sit in there better than what it did before. Again, there's a little bit of a gap. It's maybe a bit hard to see, but there is a gap with the dashboard and the windscreen. How am I going to get this in? That's the question. Now I've got a slightly different problem where the rests on the doors are preventing the dashboard from going down any further, or preventing the tub to sit properly. Oh boy, this thing is It's a bit of a nightmare. That's really practical, isn't it? Someone's going to sit there with a gear stick right on the seat. I love it. I love it. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and position the dashboard in with the tub. Let's see if we can get this whole bit in now. Nope, that's not going to work neither. Just a bit worried I'm going to be scratching all the paint on everything. Alright, I'm going to take a bit of a risk here. I'm going to glue this in place. I reckon the tub might be the one that I have to modify. So I don't think the dashboard's got a lot of... I don't have a lot of options for, you know, changing the position of that. And I'll let that dry a little bit before I start trying getting the tub in. Okay, the glue on the dashboard has had a little bit of time to set up. So now I'm going to try and attempt to get this tub in again. So wish me luck. I think what I need to do is splay out the sides of the tub. So I reckon that's the only way I'm going to get it to sort of sit properly. And because I have stuck the dashboard in, I think I'm going to have some problems with the gearboxes. Yeah, it's all coming undone. Bit hard to see, but you can see the sort of angle of the gearbox there. I obviously haven't aligned it properly, so I need to try and trim that down. It's going to be exciting. I could do that. I could sand it, but I don't think it's rigid enough to be able to do that properly. Yeah, it's too flimsy to sort of start sanding it flat, I think. You might just have to do it very slowly. So I think that's going to work. It's just going to take me a while. So I'll be back. Okay, after sanding down the gear stick housing, I'm close. I'm really close to getting this in. However, it is that armrest that is the problem, and I really just need to sort of snip a little bit of it off. I'm worried that if I do, it's going to be quite noticeable. There's literally a couple of millimeters in it. It's really close, but I can't sort of force it up. I need to either cut the dashboard or cut the armrest. And of course, before I glue this, I made a bit of a mess on my carpet. So now there's a bit of pink coming through. I might have to touch that up a little bit. Alright, trying to get the trusty grinder out, and I'm just going to nick these little edges in here. Alright, are we any closer? You know what? I think we are there. I think that is in. Okay. Now the question is am I going to get the steering wheel in there with tweezers? Let's just see how I go. Yep, I should be able to get the steering wheel in there. So I hope you can see that gap there. I might even run a bit of even a bit of tulip just around there, just to hide that gap. That might be the way to go. So once I've got everything glued in place, I'll do that. That's a good idea. Now I've just worked out I wasn't recording for the last 20 minutes trying to attach these. I am really sorry. These were quite fiddly to get on, so the little struts inside, and I'm not going to open it up just yet. I need to wait for it to dry, but the little struts in it, they're quite fragile, so I need to be really careful. So yeah, I will, once this is dried, I'll open it up and show you what it looks like, but it's just it just takes a bit of patience, which I'm running out of. I think I need to take a break and come back to this kit. It's certainly got some trying parts in the assembly side of things. Okay, I'm going to drill a hole for the magnetic pogo pins. And so I want to get it right in this little gap here. I'm just going to start with a pilot hole. And it's actually a 4mm hole that's required. Let's get started. Okay, with that 4mm hole. Well, let's see how we go, putting one of these in, see how well it fits. Not bad, not bad. Yep, the other one connects up. So you sort of see that all come up from the base. Okay, on to the next part of this. I need to stick these side pipes on. So let me get these oriented around the correct way. We've got these two little notches, I think is where the glue will go. Okay, I have put some more tulip fabric paint, black paint, just around the edges there, so no longer sort of have that gap that you can sort of see between the dashboard and the windscreen, so it tidies that up a little bit. There's one thing I should have mentioned when I was sort of putting the tub in. There's actually a clear piece that goes in, and this sort of sits, you know, at the back here, with the light bar sort of, you know, going over it like that. Now, I sort of considered using this, and I thought, really, there's very little reason to actually include this piece. If anything, it's just going to look a little bit messy, especially given that I modified this substantially and it's not a really close fit. So I've decided to omit this, but just to let you know, there is a clear glass bit that sort of goes to the back. I've got to get the light bar installed, so I want to get that sort of glued in place. So I just want to check that I get that around the right way. So I've got to feed these wires through. And of course, it's going to be a bit of musical chairs until I actually get these wires sort of all trimmed down and installed. Okay, that snaps into place, that's all good. But yeah, that clear glass should have gone underneath that blue light bar, but really I don't see any kind of point to it. The other thing is, you can see the windscreen's a little bit crooked compared to the light bar, so that wasn't really great, but not much I can sort of do about that. All right, I need to get a dab of glue in there, so I'll glue it from the underside. Shouldn't need a lot. Alright, so I'll put that aside, let that dry. Doesn't look too bad. It's really, yeah, if you're looking at it directly at the front, there's a slight dip in the windscreen. Might be able to finagle that a little bit. And I'm thinking once I screw this to the bottom of the chassis, it'll help sort of level it out a little bit. The other thing I wanted to show is, because I didn't sort of show me gluing this together, let's open this up and have a look at it. Oh, and it hasn't stuck. Great. Okay, did this one stick? No. Okay. All right, so it just, even though I didn't paint those surfaces, it appears that the glue just hasn't adhered properly. Ah dear, that's disappointing. So maybe I need to. Problem is, it's so fragile. It's sort of it's not going to hold the weight properly. Maybe the other alternative is super glue. Maybe that'll work. I could give that a shot, I guess. So I'm going to use, this has become my favourite BSI glue, super glue, just because it's gap filling and it's got a pretty quick set time on it. So I've actually become more and more of a fan of this stuff. I'll make sure I've got the right one. A little bit of glue in here, won't need much, I don't think. Try and hold it in place for it to set. Doesn't help I had the wrong one on, the right one on. Yeah, I know there's just not enough gluing in place there. I'm gonna have to do that off camera, I think. I think worst case scenario, the back pieces will just have to sit on there. I won't be able to attach them to these struts here, which is really disappointing because, you know, it'd be nice if they sort of just opened up, you know, but I just don't think there's any way to get that done. So yeah, it's not great, not great. I'll give it another shot with the super glue and see how I go. But anyway, I get sidetracked. I wanted to talk about the lighting side of things. So I've got the two LEDs headlights in place, so I've got to wire up some resistors, and then I've got to work out how this is going to feed into the next section. Basically, the chassis works like this. Okay, and it's supposed to slide in and slide out. So I need a way to have the wires sort of come to the front where this power is going to be, but I can't really have it sort of in this floor piece. I don't want it sort of on the top visible, so I'm sort of going to have to go underneath. I've got a few holes here I could probably feed the wires through, but then I'm not sure how I'm going to feed it back up into the top bit, you know, because I don't want it to be sort of too obvious. Yeah, there is a bit of a gap, which I think I've just found a potential way. There is a little bit of a gap underneath the sliding bit, and I'm not going to be sliding it in and out all the time, so maybe I could just run a bit of a small trench just in here, have the wires sort of feed through here underneath the tub and the you know, the chairs, and then come up. Maybe that's what I'll do. That'll be the tidiest sort of solution. The wires will need a bit of slack on them to allow for the sliding in and out of the back piece. I think that's what I'll do. I'll just nick a little bit out of that and I can feed the wires through. That's what I'll do. Okay, I've started sort of adding the sub-assembly. So there's this little trolley part out the back. I've got wired up the resistors and just consolidated the positives and negatives into one lead. So now I have to take the chassis part and feed these wires. Now there's actually, trying to work out the best holes to go through, but I think these two little holes here, I might feed the wires through one of those. Okay. Now I have to try and get this in place. Get that lined up. Okay. That's looking good. That's looking good. Now, I'll put a screw in here to hold it in place. Now this little thing at the back doesn't really sort of slide in that smoothly, but it does slide in. Okay, I managed to get that screw in. Still sort of slides in. See, that's what that's for. There's a, see that little slot there that plugs in there, and that's what sort of keeps it in place. I was wondering what was going on there. Okay, so I need to run these wires this sort of short little distance into the next part of the chassis. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take just a bit of black texture, and I'm just going to essentially paint the wires black so that they're not as obvious. I mean, you'll still be able to see them, but it's just about sort of reducing it. Short of having a separate sort of power supply going into the back of the vehicle, I don't see any other way I can sort of do it. They should feed into this bit, which is where I need to cut out a small notch. I'll just do this with the hobby knife. Now, given that I'm using magnet wire, it doesn't have to be particularly deep. It's just so the wires aren't sort of rubbing on the floor bit that's moving. So get these over here. And you can sort of see how that's going to work. I reckon that's going to work pretty well, actually. Alright, I've got some wiring sorted out. So basically, it looks like, you know, a dog's breakfast. Very musical chairs in there. But basically, I've got the two LEDs coming up from the light bar. They're going into the Arduino, and also the LED strip from the dashboard is going into the Arduino. And out of the Arduino, I've got a negative and a positive. I've also attached some resistors to the headlights. So there's negative and positive, and this will all be wired up to the pogo pin connector. So I wanted to sort of get this all done before I worried about how I'm going to get the back lights hooked up to the system. So essentially there's sort of the Arduino stuff, which is kind of ready to go now. And then there's the headlights and the rear lights, which are just basically going to hook straight into the power. They're not going to be hooked up to the Arduino. So I thought I'd sort of show that just before I take some black electrical tape and just tape it all down so it's not flapping around the breeze. Because I really, when I go to put all this together, I don't want sort of anything, you know, coming undone or, you know, getting in the way. The electrical tape is struggling to adhere really well to the painted plastic, but I think it'll be okay. Moment of truth is here. Everything has been hooked up to the little pogo pin. Now I've got to get this facing in there, get this on there, hold it all together, and then get it screwed in place. The other thing I've got is some non-magnetic tweezers, so hopefully I'll be able to sort of maneuver this in place. Let's get started here. Yeah, see, I'm worried about everything sort of scratching the paint surface, and try and get this so that that's a bit protected. Alright, I think that's in there. Problem is, I think I probably want to use some epoxy to secure it in place. So I need to sort of flip it over and just make sure it's okay. Looks like it is. So I might do that first. The problem is if it doesn't work and I've epoxied it in there, I'm never getting it out again. So maybe I'll just see how I go getting it in. I guess I can, as long as I don't glue it, I can always try and pull it apart again. Okay, I think that's in place, is it? Not quite. So let's step in that. There is something preventing it from clamping together. I am wondering if I trim down these pegs, if that'll make any difference. So I don't think it's going to be that that's causing the problem. Alright, that looks promising. But of course now I've got nothing to for the screws to to lock into. I'm going to have to try and super glue it in place. Now I don't want to do it for the other two holes because that's where the piece slides in and out. So I just really want that one hole. Just make sure it's lined up properly. So everything about this model is probably, you know, was fine up until I tried to assemble it. You know, I was pretty happy with the progress of it, and now I've just got to try and finagle it together. But you know, that's what I love about these old kits. They present sort of really different challenges to you know, sort of modern kits. All right, I'm going to leave that sit and see if that works or not. Body is stuck down as good as I'm going to get it, I think. It ain't perfect, but it's better than what it was. So now it's just a matter of sort of some final little pieces that need to go in place, like there's these little bars that I'm hoping they fit okay. Looks like they just press fit, which is good. And then that means I've got the steering wheel. Let's see if we can get that in place. Okay, that's in place. The steering wheel was definitely a thing I wanted to sort of do. One of the final things, just because, you know, I knew the chances of it sort of falling out and everything was going to be pretty high, or being knocked off. So that's one of the last things I wanted to get in there. And also with this piece here, so I just want to make sure that still fits okay. Looks like it does. Now, as far as the, you know, the back sort of parts, they are sort of glued to the struts now, so they do kind of open up. Although I'm saying that now, it might just pop off. They do sort of prop up, but they don't sit particularly well when you push them down. So I think I may need, when I'm just posing it sort of on the shelf, I might use a bit of blue tack just to hold it down so it looks nice and, nice and flush. All right, let's get the siren on. Really careful not to ruin my paint job. I'll let that glue set up and then onto the starting to sort out the figures and the base. Okay, time to start work on painting the figures. So I'm going to start with Ken here. I've stuck into the base just to make it a bit easier to handle while I'm painting it. The colour callouts, we've got like this light blue colour, a bit of black, there's a little bit of grey. So I'm going to start with his jumpsuit first, and for that I'm going to use Rayo Mecha Colour Blue Grey. So I'll put a little bit of this on my palette. And I'm using a number 4 brush. I'm using a number 4 brush. This is sort of my favourite go-to brush for hand painting stuff. Now I'm just going to give it a very light coat. It's not going to look great in the first round. That's all right. It's just to get some paint on there, and of course I have used a black primer to start off, and anyone who's been watching my channel for quite some time will know that figures are not my strong point, so I will quite happily understand if you want to skip ahead and not watch me make a fool of myself painting figures. So a nice thin coat, and I'll build it up in layers. Now, because I'm using sort of water-based acrylic paints, it means I can take a hairdryer to this stuff and put another coat on pretty quick. Okay, so you get the idea. So you can see how rough that is. Like, it's not a nice flat coat by any means yet, so I reckon it'll probably take 2 or 3 coats to get that right. That's okay, I'll put that aside. Now for Blader, for the robot, I'm going to use a different blue. I'm going to use electric blue. Same thing, I've stuck him down. I've given him a white primer coat, and he's got like a lot of just blue details that I'm going to sort of paint in. This, way too much. Alright, now I'll start with his head, I think. It does have these white areas on the side of his helmet. I do want to try and paint around them as best as possible. Again, it's just about a very thin coat. I'm not trying to cover, get all the coverage in one shot. That's where you end up with a lumpy paint job, and it doesn't look great. So I'll go through and I will paint the rest of the details, and then sort of give you a look-see once I've done that. Alright, the electric blue looks pretty rough. These figures, product of their time, the level of detail is pretty limited, but it's more the definition of the shapes that's sort of the issues that you can see how rough that is. So I've put a couple of coats of the electric blue on. Now for these figures, once I've got them painted, I will be doing a gloss coat, giving them an enamel wash, and then giving them a flat coat. So that does cover up a multitude of sins. But yeah, obviously the better you can get the base paint job done, the better the final result will be. Now for Ken, his jumpsuit has come up all right. So that's after 3 thin coats. So I'm sort of happy with where that is at the moment. And you can see that he has sort of a darker, darker colour for his braces, his holster, and actually he's got 2 holsters. So for that, I'm going to use Titan Blue. Just going to try and carefully run that around those edges with a very thin brush. Okay, I've done a little bit more work on the figures. Painted Ken's braces and the holsters. Also painted the gun. I just used a grey for that. I think it was grey Z, and I used the same colour for the grey details on Blader. Now the other thing, I've gone back and checked the reference too. So for Blader, he's actually got some red on the side of these white areas on the side of his head. For the red, I will use Vallejo Mecha Color Red. So it's just going to be a matter of sort of getting a couple of dots as evenly as possible on the side of his head. Of course, I kind of messed that up. That one's not too bad. That one's a bit of a mess, so it's all right. I'll wait for it to dry, and then I might just use a speck of white paint to clean that up. The other thing is this little detail on his chest. That's also red. So I'll just paint that in. Yeah, so that the kind of call out they show on the instruction says not quite right to the movie. It's pretty close. Okay, the next is the yellow. So for that, I'm going to use Mecha Color Yellow. So paint some of these yellow details on. Try and do it carefully. Right, and also his eyes. His eyes, of course, are yellow, so I need to try and get this in there. This is going to be interesting. Leave that to dry. There's a few bits I've got to touch up with a bit of white. So for touching up, I'll just use Mecha Color Pure White. But I'll leave that to dry truly before I start doing that. So I'm pretty close to sort of getting a gloss coat on this guy, and then I can do the panel line wash. Alright, so for Ken, I've actually used a bit of black paint just to touch up his boots and also his sleeves. He's like wearing, you know, sort of long sleeve t-shirt or something underneath his top. So now it's a matter of doing his face, his hands, his hair. I'm going to start with the face before I do the hair, and I'm going to use this is from a set. This is the Flesh and Skin Colors by AK. So these are water-based acrylic paints, and I'm going to be using 3 colors out of the set. Basically, base flesh. I'll start with that, and then we've got light flesh, and that'll be sort of for the mid-tones, and then highlight flesh for the highlights. Okay, so let's start with the base flesh, and this basically covers the whole area of flesh you want to paint. I may have to re-stick him to the base. I feel him coming loose as I'm sort of brushing paint on him, which is not ideal. Yep, there he goes. Right, just hang on to him and paint it. Okay, so you can see that's pretty rough. It's a thin coat. So I'll hit that with the hairdryer and then give that another coat. Okay, so the base flesh now down. Did 2 coats of that, just thin coats. And next we go to a light flesh. Now I am by no means an expert in painting figures, and there are YouTube channels out there that do a lot better, have a lot better information about this process than I could ever do. But essentially I'm going to go over all the areas except the very darkest bits, because that's where I want the base flesh to sort of remain. Alright, let's see what happens when we put some highlight flesh down. So this is just going to go on the very highlights, so those cheeks. Alright, I think I'm overworking it now. I'll try putting a bit of a enamel wash over his face as well once I've sort of given it a gloss coat. But yeah, it's pretty rough. I don't ever pretend to say that I am a good figure painter, because I am far from it. I need a lot more practice. Okay, so for his hair, I'm going to start off with Leo Brown. Okay, so we've got his baby poo brown base coat. I'll give that a hit with the hairdryer. So for the highlight in his hair, I'm going to use yellow ochre. Alright, let's run that through the hairdryer, see what it looks like. I'll do a little bit more touch-up painting on Ken, but I think it's sort of nearly as good as I'm going to get it. And then so he'll be ready for a gloss coat. Now for Blader here, I want to show you what I'm going to do for the hip parts. Alright, these are Bandai sort of detail up parts for basically I think mono eyes for gunpla and that sort of thing. But basically they come with these sort of camera lenses and pieces you can attach them to. Now the smallest lenses that you get are actually perfect to so I get that on the end of my finger. It says red. It's a nice sort of smooth shape. So I'm going to try and glue these on the side. Now to attach them, I'm just going to use some of this Testa's clear part cement. A little bit of dab of that. Okay. Alright, so I reckon that actually works pretty well. Given that I had to sand off the detail, I think that will work fine. You really have to be careful with grabbing these with tweezers, because they will, if you hold them too hard, they will go ping across the room. Alright, I reckon that's a win, that is. Yeah, in the colour call out, they sort of show that they're white on the side, but in the movie they're clearly supposed to be red. So That's cool. I think he's almost ready for a gloss coat. So with the gloss coat down on the figures, I'm going to start with the panel line wash. So for this guy, I'm going to use panel line accent color grey. Kind of messed up with this guy. He's got a bunch of ejector pin marks on the back that I didn't putty up. That's alright, no one's going to be looking at the back, hopefully. And I think I'll use a little bit of black over the blue areas. Alright, well, I've got the black out. I'll do Ken and just see sort of the folds of his clothes. Now I suspect that because the detail is not super sharp, that when I go to clean all this stuff, a lot of it's going to come off. But we will see. So it looks pretty rough, but once I clean it up, once it's dry and I clean it up, it shouldn't be too bad, I don't think. At least it'll pick out some of those shadow areas. All right, now for his face, I'm going to use and his hands. I'm going to use this deep brown. Now it makes him look very cartoony, but yeah, once I clean it off, it'll be right in the crevices where it needs to be. So I've left the enamel wash some time to dry, a few hours. So now it's time to sort of clean it up. And for that, I'll just be doing exactly the same thing I did for the vehicle, using some shellite, use some enamel thinner. I'm just using a cotton bud, dab off the excess, and then just sort of running it over where the problem areas are. You get the idea. Like I said, works exactly the same way as what I've shown before. So I'll go ahead and clean the rest of him up. Clean up Ken as well, and then we should be ready for a matte coat on both of the figures. Okay, time to talk about the base. I've constructed this out of 1mm thick styrene. And you can see I've just made a series of strips to go around the side, a top piece, and I've put this strut in the middle just to give it a little bit of strength. So some other things that I've done is I've drilled a hole for where the power connector goes, a hole for the USB socket, so just the USB-C socket will go in there like so, and also a hole for the switch. So given that I've got wires sort of going to both, I had to drill a hole in the strut here just to make sure I've got somewhere for the wires to feed through to. So nothing amazing there. I've just given it a bit of a sand, and to show you how I worked out where to put the hole for the power, I checked to see where the socket was, and it's basically in line with the front of the windscreen. So I basically drew two little dots, one on each side, and then sort of got my ruler, just measured halfway across, and what that gave me was somewhere in the middle there. Now, as far as the connector goes, it does have to be raised up a little bit, so it's not going to work just having it sort of flush with the base here. So what I've done is I've taken some styrene tube. This is 1/4" tube by Evergreen, and I had to bore out the hole just a little bit with a 5.5mm drill bit, just to get the other pogo pin section in. I've wired that up, and it's not glued in place yet, but I will probably just epoxy it in there so it doesn't go anywhere. But I envisage that this will poke through like so, and then I can set the
the vehicle on it to line it up, and then I can sort of turn it over and glue it in place. So that's the plan for the base. I'm sorry, the camera keeps playing up because of the white base. Now, as far as how I'm going to, what I'm going to put on the base, I want obviously a road texture, and I'm going to use this stuff, which is asphalt texture, and this is by Green Stuff World. So this is an acrylic based product, and I did a bit of a test just to see what it looks like, and I'm really happy with the results. It definitely looks like asphalt. It's maybe a little bit out of scale for the vehicle, but I think it'll be fine, and you know, it'll really sort of set off the vehicle just being on a dark sort of road surface. And I'll paint some lines on it and maybe dirty up the road a little bit, but the base component is going to be this stuff. Okay. All right, I've primed the base in black, and you can see the top's pretty rough. I didn't give it a good solid coat. The reason for it is I'm going to be covering it up with stuff. However, the sides I have painted properly in black, so I'm going to mask them off first. I'm just going to use some sort of wider masking tape to do that. Alright, so I'm just going to go ahead and mask all the edges like that, and then we'll be back. Masked off all the sides, so I should get a nice clean edge once I put the ground cover on. I should also say I did use some two-part epoxy just to hold the tube in place too, that's going to eventually hold the connection pogo pins. So for this stuff, this does get pretty messy, this stuff, so I'm going to put on some gloves. And I'm going to be using just sort of some ice cream sticks just to sort of spread it, get it on the surface. And then I'm just going to use some paper towel to kind of flatten it out a bit. So I'm trying to get a reasonably even coverage on it. So now I'm going to take some paper towel, and I'm just going to try and sort of dab at it so it just flattens out a bit better. Now I am sure there is a better way of applying this stuff. So if you know of a better way, please let me know in the comments. But if you just sort of carefully even it out with a paper towel, I find that's a little bit better than a brush. That'll probably do. So I'll show you what that looks like once it's all dried. Okay, this asphalt stuff has had time to dry, and I'm not really happy with the level of grit that it has. It's going to be a bit out of scale. It's a bit too, the grit's a bit too high. So if you compare that, maybe a bit hard to tell, but my first test application was better than what I did on here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a very coarse sanding stick, and I'm just going to start sanding it down just to try and knock back the height of the texture. I still want the texture there, just I want to knock the height back a bit. So. To give you an idea of how durable this stuff is, it is just making a mess of sanding stick. Now admittedly this is not a good quality one, but you know, it is just ripping it to shreds. Yeah, I think that one's had it. So it is working. I am going to have to paint over the top of it, because you can see here I've sort of taken it back to the styrene. So what I'll end up doing is once I've finished sanding it, I'll give it a paint with some SMS charcoal. I do want to sort of weather it up a bit with some pastels, and of course do the road markings. Painted the road base. Now I the grey that I used was a bit too blue, so what I ended up doing was just going over it with this Vallejo Model Wash dark grey. So I blanket over the whole lot of that, and then I use just a little bit of this here and there, which is the oiled earth. These are both water-based products, so they go over the lacquer-based acrylics, no worries, and I think that's pretty good. I think you know, once I get some lines on it, keeping in mind that the vehicle, you know, is going to be sitting on top of it, so it's not the sort of main focus, but at least I've got a bit of variation there in colour. The surface is a little bit flatter than what it was after a lot of sanding, so I think that's almost there. I'll wait for that to dry, and then I'll do the masking for the line markings. So I masked off a couple of stripes on the road, just using sort of some masking tape. You can sort of see the masking there, and I just use SMS white to paint the lines in. So let's take off the masking and see how it went. Didn't come up too bad. The double lines there. I don't know if to weather it up any. I don't think it really needs it. Keeping in mind the car will be across sort of the side, so yeah, I don't think it needs too much more weathering. I don't think I'll even bother getting the pastels out. I think that'll be fine. I do want it to just be a base, something to stick the figures to and something to stick the vehicle to. Now, speaking of the figures, I have put a matte coat over them, so they are as good as they're going to get. Just need to remove them from the bases carefully. So I'll have to sort of work out where I want them to sit. I think I have one on one side of the vehicle and then one on the other. Okay, something sort of like that with the vehicle across. Here, I might as well pull the masking off the sides just to see how it looks. Okay, so the masking tape removed. It all looks pretty good. It's a nice little base, I think. I think that'll do. So just to quickly go over how I'm going to wire all this up. It's a very simple circuit. Basically, you've got the negative from the power connector to the negative of the USB socket, and so they just get joined up. We've got the positive from the socket going to the switch, and a positive from the power connector base also going to the switch. Very simple sort of circuit. All the resistors and everything is sort of in the vehicle, so I don't have to worry about any of that here. So I'll get this all soldered up, and then we're going to be ready to test it. Fingers crossed. Moment of truth. I've got it plugged into the USB socket. Let's turn it on, see what happens. There's some light at the back, which is good. You can see the lights here working. Can't see obviously in this light, but the headlights are working and the dashboard lights are all working. So that's a relief. Just a couple of final thoughts on this kit before we go to the beauty shots. I really enjoyed the lighting side of this kit. You know, as I do with most of the kits that I do, I really enjoy that sort of lighting side of things. There are a couple of things around the construction of the kit that I messed up on, and some things that I think, you know, are inherent issues with the kit itself. First of all, the wing mirrors, I should have followed the instructions and installed them after the windshield. So that was my blue. I do prefer the windshield how it sits now rather than the way it's supposed to go together in the instructions. It has a really odd sort of assembly, what would you say, assembly method as far as, you know, the way all the pieces sort of come together. But that's all right. I mean, you know, kits in the 80s, they've all got different quirks and that sort of thing. I do think the struts for the back doors here are a bit thin, a bit flimsy. Would have been nice if they'd come up with a way to make that a little bit more stable. But overall, I'm really happy with, you know, the tyres. The tyres are really good on the car. The pieces are all clean. There was no flash or anything like that. So I'm really glad this kit was made. I think it's a really interesting vehicle, and I'm so happy that it was made and that I've had a chance to actually build it and paint it. I'm reasonably happy with the final result. The figures are a bit rubbish, to be perfectly honest, but I know that's not my strength.
as far as the actual vehicle itself has come up, I think it's not too bad. So on to the beauty shots, and until next build series, I'll catch you later. One thing I forgot to do throughout the build process was to check to see if this glue was any good. Now, there's no sign of it opening or having it split anywhere along the tube, although it feels pretty solid. Now, if this kit is from the 80s, obviously it's sort of over 40 years old, so I don't expect the glue in there is going to be any good. But just in case, I've got some sprue. We'll see if there's any glue in it. So you can see it's punctured there, but there is no glue coming out, and it is rock solid. So for those of you who were interested, styrene cement doesn't last 40 years in a tube like this.